The world's moving faster than the curriculum.
Yeah.
And that's where we're creating the gap.
There's been a bit of a breakdown in this social contract between kind of employers and candidates.
Right now in the UK, roughly 1 in 9 young Britons are unemployed. Hello and welcome back to People First, the Young Careers podcast. I'm your host Jordan, and today we're asking a very important question. Is the junior job market dead? It's never been harder to get your foot in the door. There's fewer graduate jobs, less routes into work, and a lot of people are asking, is uni even worth it? To break this down, I'm joined by Paul Porter from the Bright Network, and also my colleague Dionne Jackson, intelligence consultant at ManpowerGroup. Welcome to the podcast, guys. Before we get into it, a question that we ask all our guests is, what was your first ever job? Simple one. Go on, Dionne.
So my first ever job, I was 14 and I started work in the local market in Coventry selling potatoes. So yeah, many moons ago.
Anything similar, your side?
Similar age, I think I was 13 or 14, but it was a local paper round.
Okay, great. Classic. Get that all the time. It's probably my number one answer is paper round for
really
sure.
unique.
Yeah, well, it's not even that. I mean, it's how does the paper round even still exist anymore? Is a question that I would have, you know?
Probably not, I don't know.
It was quite a lot of people's first jobs too. So, I don't know, we'll find out hopefully before the end of the episode. So I want to read from my notes here because I just want to set the scene really, really quickly. So right now in the UK, roughly 1 in 9 young Britons are unemployed. Okay, so that's over 1 million people are NEET, so that's not an education or any formal training. People are losing faith, we think, in the higher education system, and it's not hard to see why. A lot of graduates, I feel like at the moment, are feeling a bit shortchanged with their experience because they started a degree 3 years ago and the job that they maybe had in their head then doesn't exist now in the variation that they planned. So I'm going to come to you first, Paul. From where you sit at Bright Network, what would you say the current status of the graduate or the early career job market is?
Yeah, good question. I suppose I've got two kind of answers based on what you've just talked through. I think, firstly, I agree. I think there's been a divergence really with like the education system has always been built up. It's been ultimately credentialism, and that's how we've all grown up and how we've all been kind of taught to believe is you go to school, you get good grades, you go to university, you get a degree, you'll go into a good career. And I think that has broken down a little bit as companies try and be more open and accessible and inclusive with their hiring, which is a good thing. But then the practices and proxies they're using that aren't your degree and or your prior experience and that kind of thing makes it harder for students. And you're right, I think that going to university now is significantly more expensive than it was even when I went. And it's still very hard to come out and get kind of your professional career started, as it were. In terms of the job market now, I think there's a lot, don't get me wrong, I don't think it's in the best condition it's ever been. But equally, there's been a huge amount of scaremongering and kind of all very doom and gloom for the last year, 18 months. Lots of studies supposedly or statistics coming out to say that the job market, particularly at the early careers level, is just completely collapsing. And fundamentally, that's just not true. And that's not what we're seeing at Bright Network. Yes, a lot of companies aren't necessarily growing their early careers initiatives at the moment. It's relatively static, but there's still huge amounts of opportunity out there. What we're finding is that there's been a significant increase in students applying to more jobs because of the lack of confidence they have in the market, because technology and AI tools are allowing them to apply to a lot more jobs a lot more quickly. That companies are advertising less in terms of where they're putting their adverts and for shorter periods. And so if you look at the data of advertised vacancies, yes, that has decreased in the last couple of years.
It's decreased as much as this morning as well. So I think there's something like 19,000 less vacancies in the market as of today from last month. So.
Yeah, exactly. But actually a huge amount of that is they're just advertising those vacancies less, but they still exist. So I was just going to finish my final point. I think even, was it Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, came out 2-3 weeks ago and said, I was wrong. He was the first one sort of flying the flag of, the early career or the early job and admin roles are going to die in the wake of generative AI. We're all going to lose our jobs and students, et cetera, all in loads of trouble. And actually, he's even come out 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago and said, I was wrong. I can see now that actually, there's still a huge amount of value in that level of employment, the human side of jobs, all of those kinds of things. So not in the best space it's ever been, but equally I think it's significantly better than necessarily the media's painted it out to be.
Do you have a take, Dionne?
I agree. When we're looking at the data, we're seeing, 47% of the roles that are going to be advertised from companies we're speaking with are going to be entry level, and that's across all industries. So whilst the jobs may have changed from, like you say, AI being implemented, they are still there, and there is an appetite for organisations to still recruit for them.
And how do you think we got here? And I mean, because I have agreed and disagreed with things that you've both said so far about the market, but I would like to know your thoughts on how we are at this point right now.
I think for me, what I would say is there's so many different changes happening at the moment. We've got the economy changes, everything that's happening from an economic perspective, and also what's happening from a geographical. We've got the higher costs for employers that are now being implemented to recruit, and also AI and technology. It's the readiness from organisations and the unknown.
Yeah. Your take, Paul?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Dionne's just said. I also think from more of a recruitment program perspective, there's been a bit of a breakdown in this social contract between kind of employers and candidates. Employers expect candidates to put effort into their applications, to be authentic, and to try hard and ultimately give them best selves for a job. And they expect from employees to treat them like humans, give them feedback, come back to them on outcomes, even if it's not positive. And we're in this vicious cycle now where candidates are using like generative AI tools to submit quite generic, poor applications. Yeah. Employers are swamped and can't deal with them. And so you're in this vicious cycle where candidates are applying to more, hearing back less, going through more generic processes, and employers are frustrated because they're just having to wade through piles of very generic, similar looking applications. And so that kind of social contract is just completely broken down.
That makes sense. In previous downturns, we've seen specific sectors shield juniors. Is this current squeeze hitting every industry universally, or is there any sector staying resilient?
What we're seeing at the moment in the market is all companies that we're speaking with across all industries, there is still an appetite to recruit for those entry-level roles. At the moment, all of them are over like 45%, nearly 50%, all of the industries are looking to recruit. So I'd say whilst it's changed, there's still areas and industries that are still going to be hiring those entry-level roles.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's any particular industry that is perfectly shielded over others. Still, I think, the typical industries that are relatively, I guess, shielded or safe for early careers are those kind of time-based professional services. And don't get me wrong, I don't think this of graduates for early careers at all, but that kind of cheap resource that they can then sell to their end clients for quite strong margins. So law, consulting, etc. And also, as you said, as Dionne just said, the market is really changing. So I think it was IBM fairly recently. I think it was their US operation versus their UK, but they actually said they're going to increase their early careers headcount quite significantly around technology consulting, because obviously there's going to be lots of other companies and industries out there who are going to need lots of support as we move into kind of additional uptake on AI tools. So a bit horses for courses, I suppose.
I think as well what we've seen with the government that they've recently announced that they're going to introduce these new AI boot camps as well, and they're supporting organisations with those AI technology skills as well for those entry level and early careers. So like you say, that's going to be great for the early careers talent.
But there's still this is all great conversation, but the bottom line is there's still over 1 million people not in, like, that's not even just in work, in doing anything, not in any education or formal training. And we know how much it's like having a job or having your first start into work has on your sense of purpose and your sense of self, and even earning your own money to spend it on yourself, something as simple as that. So how like can businesses really re-engage with that pool of talent, without, because we're at risk of really having like a bit of a lost generation of talent. And I'm actually, there's a layer to my question, and it's something that I've seen, I don't know when this podcast will go out, but the social media ban, like, how are you, Paul, and Bright Network going to engage 15-year-olds to apply for apprenticeships with your clients if you can't reach them through social, which is a platform they want to be met on? So there's two parts to that question, and I'm going to ask is, I'm just going to open the floor. How are the businesses, how are they going to, how can we engage with these people? And I've just sort of talked about a barrier to it again, so I'd love both of your take on that, really.
I agree. You know, the social media ban is going to be a massive challenge, because we know in order to, you know, have those conversations with the early careers talent, we need to get to them earlier.
You need to meet them, literally, exactly that.
That's it. So I think for organisations, there's a couple of things that they need to be thinking around to get the existing NEET population, you know, thinking about flexibility, understanding why people are not in employment. You know, is it that they've got commitment challenges around like family, or, you know, we've also got mental health, a massive population of the people that are not in employment, education or training. They are one of the biggest population that have mental health challenges. So it's thinking around how can organisations support that, whether it's offering flexibility, more mental health support, but also making sure, like you say, those opportunities are paid, so people can earn that money and feel that sense of purpose.
Yeah. Paul?
Yeah, again, I completely agree. And I think I think employers ultimately, they need to be doing more to actually train people themselves. There's also lots of stats out there and studies recently that have shown employers are saying they can't find all of the talent they need in quite, you know, some more specialist areas, and this isn't just early careers as well, but particularly things like technical skills or transformation skills, that kind of thing. They're saying there's a shortage, they can't hire for those skills. And they're going to need to start redirecting resources to bringing people on and really focusing on the human element of hiring. You know, their innate behaviour skills, etc., not just the technical acumen, and then training them in those skills. If they can't find what they need, then they're going to have to hire people and actually do it more themselves. Which again, there is a bit of divergence between the education system and jobs, and I don't think that's helping anything at all. But yeah, I think in terms of what I think, you know, things like the government AI skills training that hopefully lots of companies are going to get on board with, I do think that's a step in the right direction. The social media ban, I think,
I'm really interested in your take. A
really interesting point. And I'll quickly say at Bright Network, we've not necessarily all sat down as a business and gone, what does this mean for us? And what does that look like? And I think it is going to make things, it's going to significantly change the playing field for us. I mean, hopefully it does add weight to our own platform without sounding too pluggy.
No, I get that. Yeah. I can see why that would be the case.
Yeah, so hopefully we can still be that place that students come and be that support network that they don't have themselves through familial connections or you know, own their own professional connections. But I do agree, and it does concern me that social media for a lot of especially underrepresented or less privileged young people in the country, you know, who don't know those who people who already work in law or consulting or those professional industries, how are they going to see them now if they can't go and see, you know, day in the life videos of someone who's gone from in a city council accommodation to go and work for the Magic Circle?
I completely get. I you know, I grew up in free school males, but like I think you're allowed to have a dream whenever you're like 15, and where you find some. That's, I think social media and that online community does help you think a bit bigger. Like, who without the internet would know that you wanted to go and study fashion, or do you know, like real, like if you're from like a real working class, like blue collar town, like how do you see what else is out there that's maybe against the grain of jobs that your aunties and your uncles didn't do, you know?
If you can't see it, you can't be
exactly,
it,
right? Literally just about to say that, you know, and I remember having conversations when I've been at recruitment fairs, and this is probably what organisations are going to have to do to, you know, bring back that representation. I've had so many young brown women come up to me and say, I've come over to your table in particular because you look like me. So it's that if you can't see it, you can't be it. So how do we get that representation out there?
Such a lovely point. Moving on to the next part of our question. And so what does it actually, I'm going to come to you first, Paul. What does it actually take for a junior candidate to get ahead right now? You know, what's standing out on CVs? What sort of, what do you think employers are really looking for when they're giving someone their first job?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm answering this from the perspective of Bright Network, which is the more, I guess, professional industries, as it were, as opposed to, I hate the phrase, but, you know, service industries or blue collar or that kind of thing. It's really tough. Like, as I said, application volumes per vacancy are going through the roof. In some cases, we've heard like 100 to 500% year on year for different businesses. So it is really challenging. My advice is just try not to get too disheartened and really focus on every application you're making. Don't fall into the trap that lots of them are in terms of just using some generic input into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and then spitting that into an application form, it just won't get you anywhere. And I think that's really important, kind of a really important point to make. My other point is really to not be so, obviously have a dream and really focus on that and go for the career you want to, but equally don't let that be the be all and end all. If you need to go and work in a shop on weekends or a pub or whatever it might be, in the interim, or you know what, you have to start in a slightly adjacent career that wasn't necessarily your dream up front, then I think it's much better to go down that route and be doing something, earning some money, whilst then continuing to try and chase that dream. Rather than just putting all of your eggs in one basket.
And like, I go on ahead, I heard you take a breath there, I know you're going to say something, come on.
Always. Just to echo that, and I think it's not to discredit what skills you're going to gain from that.
Absolutely.
And it's the soft skills, you know, it's learning how to deal with people, stakeholder engagement,
crisis management,
service, crisis management, all of those things that may not be your end goal, but it's all those soft skills that you're going to pick up along the way to get you on that journey. And I think, you know, from a hiring managers and an organisation's perspective, they're going to see those, right, that person's worked on a project or volunteered here, and that could put you, you know, just both candidates could be the same, but you're the person with that working experience, whether it's paid or not. It's those extra skills that's going to help you stand out.
Yeah, and sorry, I missed the first part of your question around kind of what employers are looking for.
Yeah.
We do a big survey every year called What Do Graduates Want? Survey sort of 20,000 odd students and employers. And one of my favourite questions every year is we ask students what they think employers are looking for, and then we ask employers what they're actually looking for, and then we can obviously compare the list and see where they come up. Every year, students and young people put existing industry experience as the number one thing they think employers are looking for. And for employers, that's way down the list.
Yeah.
And actually, but what they do have at the top of the list is motivation for our company in the role, or passion for the business. And then things like resilience, teamwork, as you said, those softer transferable skills that you can build anywhere. And again, I think that's something that employers could be doing better, is really actually giving practical examples of what passion for the business means to them and what that looks like, because it can mean different things to different people. And so again, any support, advice, content they can be producing to say, like, this is what we want you to see of you in the recruitment process, to show you've really considered us, this is why you've applied to the company, this is why you've applied to the job, because that's what they're really trying to get at. But students just can't quite get there and connect the dots without some support. But again, coming back to your point, if there's no social media, that's going to become a harder thing to do unless you're getting students to go directly to your platform, which
it's just going to be, I guess, a new way of engaging with them. But something we've touched on, and it's actually the next question I was going to ask, is like, what about starting out in like jobs like, you know, if you're waiting on your dream or your big break, like hospitality, retail, customer service. I have been quoted 1 million times in my career saying that every single person before they enter the world of work needs to either work in a call centre, wait on tables, make drinks, or work with the public some way. I've actually done all three, so I'm very well versed. But I look at people, especially leaders, in my career, and I've went, you've never waited on a table in your life, and you can really tell, because it's not only is hospitality a very, very fast route into management for a lot of underprivileged or some underrepresented communities too. You get a job in your local pub, you can probably be assistant manager in the space of 3 years, right? Yeah. You can do loads of good training, you know, barista training, food safety, like you do loads of stuff. So my message for listeners would be, don't discredit jobs like that, because it actually makes you, in my opinion, not that mine really matters, but like way more employable, right? Because if me and you are having a disagreement and I'm waiting on you, you actually are having conflict with me to my face, right? If you got a hair in your food and I have to sit there and put an answer for that out of my rear end, like, you know, a crime behind an email is no bother, because you have to do things like that. So, like, I don't know if you agree with me or if I'm just waffling here, but I just think that it's okay to go into a stepping stone, because like the skills that you learn in those places will really take you a lot further in life. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Totally agree. And I think people need to think around hospitality not just as that waiting on tables. They're massive organisations, you know, and when you take out the front line, they are a lot of corporate organisations as well. So it can open up doors internally.
Yeah, but we were saying yesterday, we had a conversation with a colleague, and I'm sorry you weren't in it, Paul, but a friend of ours in the office, his friend wants to get into marketing, which is fine. So does every graduate, apparently. I think it's one of the most sought after career routes, right? But he was like, he doesn't not really get much experience, but he's working in the hospitality at the minute. And I was like, but does the pub have a social media account? Like, can you do their LinkedIn or something? Can you do their Instagram? Like, can you make content? Are you good at photography? Do you want to take some food and drinks pics and make some, really good UGC? I think there is, and there has to be an onus sometimes on the worker, right?
I was going to say
create those opportunities through yourself and open those sorts of doors, and be a little bit of a chancer too. Like if you say you're working in a shop, or you're working somewhere and you meet someone that you really enjoy and you think that you really like the way they think, ask to hang out with them. Spend time with people. My housemate actually, she's not a graduate anymore. She thinks she wish she was, but she met a girl who is she met a girl or a lady in a coffee shop a few weeks ago. They just got talking in a queue, and that lady is about to be the creative director for kidswear for one of the biggest high street stores right now, and Emmy might be her number 2. Do you know what I mean? And that's all from the conversation online. So my take would be, or my question to the room again is, in those early years of when you're trying to get your foot in the door, what are some steps you can take to really put yourself ahead? Because I could ask questions about about AI and your CV and stuff like that, but really on the bottom line, what do you guys think the best thing you can do as a young person to get ahead right now?
I sorry, Dionne.
No,
you
fine,
go ahead. I agree with everything you've just said, really, and actually more so. I think you said something along the lines of doing a service job or a waiting job. People need to get with the idea that's okay. I'd actually say go further than that and say I would encourage them.
I would as well, right?
It's really valuable experience. As you said, you're going to deal with all types of people who you get on with, people who challenge you unfairly.
Yeah.
Again, I worked in a pub. You get a lot of people who ask.
I still work in a pub now, right? And I'm a big corporate boy. I still like to do it to keep me down to earth. But Carrie, I interjected.
People complaining their food wasn't good enough and they've got a clean plate, and all of those fun conversations that really help you learn how to deal with society. And you're right. You get so many kind of wider transferable skills which are really valuable. On the flip side, I think there's always this kind of utopian view of all the grass is greener of I don't like this job, but when I'm in this big professional firm, I'll be going into meetings and I'll be doing really cool work all the time. So, and actually, I think just learning that every day in your job probably isn't going to be like that, especially early on in your career. There's going to be tasks you have to do which you don't like or you don't see the point of, but you sort of have to get on with them if that's your job.
I've done tasks I don't like to do and don't seem to the point of today. Do you know what I mean? Today. So,
exactly.
It's just gritting your teeth.
That's part of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you learn that early on in your career, and I do completely agree with your point around there has to be a bit of an onus on the individual to say,
totally.
Right, what do you want to go and do? And you say, okay, you can't go and do that now, but what can you do to try and make that happen? And you're absolutely right. If it's marketing, doing the photography, managing social media,
right?
There's benefit of the internet. There's 1,000,001 free resources online, free courses you can go and do, all things you can be putting onto a CV to say, look, I'm trying everything I can to get into this industry.
Yeah.
And just to flip the view on its head for people who say, I'd rather not do that. I really want to focus on getting my professional job. As a hiring manager, if I've got 2 students in front of me or 2 young people, one of them has done nothing for 2 years since they left school because they've just been trying to get the job they want. Fine. I'm not saying that's the worst thing in the world. But the other one for the last 2 years has done waitressing and they've done a couple of online courses around law or marketing or whatever it is they want to do. They exactly, that's how they're showing their passion for the industry and the business. And that's probably the person I'm going to be leaning towards.
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's little things that you don't, when it comes to your CV, that you don't always appreciate. For example, whenever I recruited in Belfast, if I saw a CV that someone was bilingual in English and Gaeilge, I would have put them through to interview straight away because it takes a lot of effort to keep up 2 languages over there, especially when people aren't speaking Irish every day. So it's like little things like that. Like, have you been even on Duolingo for a year? Yeah. Like, what have you been doing that's bettering yourself and trying to bring you forward is what my advice would be. Those are the things that you need to really focus on. Dionne, sorry.
That brings me to my point, temporary work, don't discredit that. I used to be a temporary recruitment consultant and just entry-level graduates would be the best type of candidate. And I used to say to them, this is a great opportunity for you to work in different organisations, understand, you know, how far the travel is. Do you like a big corporation, a smaller business? Pick up new skills. And back to your point, Jordan, about your housemate, you don't know who you're going to meet.
Exactly.
You're stood there at the coffee machine making a drink and you don't know who this person's partner is, where they're working, and it can open up so many different doors and so many opportunities. So I used to always encourage graduates to think around temporary work.
Exactly, I get it. Like, I mean, I've done every fucking job under the sun. I swear to God. But like